text her.
No worries.
Give me 1 second to do
It's okay.
that.
You're live.
Great. Thanks, Sasha. And if it's okay with everyone, I'm just going to call the May 3rd, 2021 MAPC officers meeting to order. I'm Erin, the president, and the meeting is being conducted remotely via Zoom, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020. And to provide public access to the meeting while limiting the potential abuse of video conferencing technology, aka Zoom bombing, members of the public may view the proceedings either live or in syndication at youtube.com/user/MAPC Metro Boston. And with that, I'll call the meeting to order. I'll do roll call as well. So Treasurer Sam?
Here.
Secretary Sandra?
Here.
VP Adam?
Here.
And me, President Erin, here. First up, or next up on the agenda, is the approval of minutes from our officers meeting on April 5th, 2021.
So moved.
Motion made by Sam. Is there a second? Okay, second made by Adam. Any comments, questions, input? Great. With that, roll call vote is required. So Sam?
Yes.
Sandra?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
And Erin, yes. Motion passes 4-0. Great.
It's a tall order to squeak by with no typos caught by Sandra. I'm feeling really good about today.
Don't jinx yourself.
I know. We're all just living the dream here. Okay, next up is the review of contracts. Mark, take it away.
Yes. So Heidi or Sasha, do you want to share that, or do you want me to I could bring it up on the screen. Shall I do that? And I can move around in the contracts. So shall I do that? All right, give me one. Oh, Sasha says that as though she's doubtful I can actually make it happen.
No. I just made you a co-host. So you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, hold on 1 second. We're going to go through pass-through first. And I believe those pass-through contracts had no changes on them, so they are simply available from Sheila. All right, now that it's on the screen, let me see if I can share it. Here we go. And it's this one. Okay, did that work?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, excellent. All right. So the pass-through contracts don't usually require a great deal of attention. The top one is our auditor, 2 more years with Powers and Sullivan. As Sam knows, it is my expectation that after that, we will probably contract for at least 1 or 2 years with another auditor, as is appropriate process. You don't want to stay with the same auditor for decades. So we have usually been with Powers and Sullivan. We like them and they know us and understand us, but we'll do this for the next 2 years and then probably go with someone else. A number of these contracts are pass-through contracts with artists who are participating in our creative COVID-19 communications program through the arts and culture and public health departments. Public health is also involved in that one. And so you'll see a number of those there. We did also contract with Carla Sherry, you see down here, who used to work for the city of Lynn on the Linstallation project, but it became easier for us to contract with her directly, and that was approved by the city beforehand. So that is one contract that we have in pass-through here. Lastly, I'll note that EOPS has provided us with $25,000 of additional Shannon money for the purpose of helping to make sure that various Shannon events, particularly in-person events, but also, well, it's mostly in-person events, take into account COVID-related obstacles and issues. And we know that our communities are thankful to have those additional resources for that purpose. that's a brief sum up of the pass-through contracts. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
I have just a brief question, Mark. Why is Powers and Sullivan a pass-through? Like, why is that structured that way?
Well, what it means is that this is a $78,000 fee to them.
Okay.
This doesn't cover, for example, all of our staff work on the audit. It is the fee to the auditor.
And that's not just an expenditure. Sorry, this is more of a technical thing, but
Sam, it's true. I've had this question as well. Before coming to Mapc, I would really have sort of three categories. One being, direct staff expenditure, payments for services to other entities, which would be something like this, and then passing money through, for example, to cities and towns, or in my prior job to CDCs, usually with a fee attached. But in this case, we've always considered these direct expenditure contracts to also be in the pass-through category. I acknowledge the difference, but this is the way we list it.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's just a question. Okay, thanks.
Sure. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to stop sharing this one and briefly locate the revenue contract list. Can you see it? Good. Okay. So, as I think you are probably aware, we are participating in DHCD's local rapid recovery plan program. We are serving 5 communities. I think I'll get them right: Framingham, Braintree, Lynn, Revere, Hudson. Rebecca, do you think I got those right? Did I miss something?
I think that's right.
I think that's correct. So there are scores, maybe over 100 communities participating in this program. We are just serving 5 of them. And then we are also serving as a project expert providing, or a content expert providing assistance to a variety of entities, including beyond those 5. This contract is for the main bulk of the work, where we are keeping the vast majority of the funds. This is such an intense program over such a short period of time that we have actually brought on additional staff support in the Economic Development Division to assist us with it. And we are passing through $50,000 of the dollars, mostly to community-based organizations, to assist us with survey and outreach activities. Town of Norwood, again, we are continuing to do a lot of our tremendous work. Carolina certainly knows this. Sasha knows this in terms of helping our individual communities with town meeting. We've done a lot of work with Norwood, and we're continuing to work with them there. The MIT contract is an exciting contract that is funded. I have Robert Wood Johnson in my head. I might have the wrong funder, but there was a lot of competition for this particular project. We've been asked by Dr. Joe Ferreira in the Urban Studies and Planning Department to play a role in this transportation research project. And we're in the first phase of it now, which is sort of the smaller dollars for initial work. If we're lucky and good, we may have an opportunity to receive more funds and do the fuller project as well. Let me just proceed more quickly through some of these. I don't think they all need our attention. We're doing a lot of work in the town of Milton, yet another contract. They seem to have a lot of confidence in us, do a lot of great work down there. And several of the other contracts, I think, don't require specific commentary. Another good month for contracts, lots of additional work coming in. Glad to answer questions. Okay.
I'll ask
Yes,
since
Sam.
I'm always asking, is work increasing? How does that feel these days?
Well, it feels good to me. I think I'll let Rebecca talk about that a little bit if she wants.
Oh, yeah. I think Mark and I have been consistent for a while now that our biggest problem is too much work and not enough staff right now, as opposed to, I think, our concerns, moving into last year that we might have too many staff and not enough work. And so I think the biggest challenge will be, appropriately hiring for the level of work that we see coming in, which I feel like is, tremendous right now.
Okay, good.
But if people
And
only come
Sam-
into the office 2 or 3 days a week, we've certainly solved the space problem. So we don't have to worry about that as much.
Well, I don't know if Heidi would feel that way. It's going to be
Yeah.
complicated. Come the fall, the space issue will be very complicated. But
Yeah.
I think, Sam, you will see that kind of question about appropriate staffing for the level of work that we currently have, as well as, anticipated increase in work, particularly, the ARPA fund. There's lots of opportunities. And that will play out in the budget, which we're about to undertake this month as we think about what the appropriate positions are to add.
Right. Raises an interesting question of the opportunities of, you don't necessarily have to go after every contract you could win if you can't staff for it.
Yes, we've already definitely started we just turned down, for example, a master plan RFP that I know that staff had looked at and said, no, we can't take on another master plan right now. So
Right.
I think it's about, thinking about what is the important work that we want to do with our communities. And I think moving into recovery, there's a lot of important work that we want to do.
And prioritizing your own goals in all the possible work you could be doing in the region.
Both of us still hate saying no, but
Right.
but we have to do it, and
Right.
we recognize it as an opportunity cost, because if you're working on something that takes you away from primary goals on equity, on COVID recovery, on climate, on other issues, then there's a cost for that. We have only, we have limited resources, the most limited resources, staff hours.
Yeah.
Sandra, I think, had a question. I don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah, I just had a couple of brief questions. So on the 2 items to plan and implement bike and pedestrian facilities, is that like coming up with a bike ped plan, basically? Like, I mean,
Yes.
Since they're both worded exactly the same, is this like something that MAPC sort of says, okay, we're in the market to do this kind of thing? Or
It is something that we are definitely always in the market to do. We do a lot of bike and pedestrian plans.
okay,
And then we help to implement those plans in some cases. We also do data collection so that people can keep counts on pedestrian and bicycle activity. We're trying to improve the accuracy of that notoriously difficult to count activity. And this is something we definitely do.
yeah, okay, thanks. And then on the Peabody grant, so could you just say briefly what the COVID communication campaign is?
That is heavily in Rebecca's domain, so I'm going to turn to her.
Sure. So this Peabody grant is a regional grant that we're working with on North Shore communities to do a communications campaign on vaccine hesitancy, as well as continued COVID safe behavior. And we are already working on a contract. We'd actually had some additional regional funding for this group of municipalities, I think actually that had been previously set aside to do some outreach to new mothers, but we've moved that to COVID communication. So the last time around, we did put out a RFP and contacted with a firm run by Joyce to kind of also work on communication in different languages all up and down the North Shore, and some media buys as well.
Great, thanks. It sounds great. Yeah,
and I think I'm hoping Heidi sent it out, but as I mentioned at a executive committee, we've put together a web page, but it's really more than a web page. It's, a resource that has all of the materials either that consultants are putting together for us, or that we've been able to get, for example, from the Mass League of Community Health Centers or from other communities, to try to create one place so that for all communities, those resources can be shared.
Great, thanks.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. Thank you so much. So next up on the agenda is the hiring and staff changes. Rebecca?
Sure. Well, I think, as we kind of alluded to in the last conversation, we are in a period of hiring. Some of the hiring is the continued, we had to put a pause on filling any positions that we had lost due to attrition. And some of them are actually now new positions that we had put into the mid-year budget. So our most recent hires are Allison Zimmon, who I think you all met at executive committee on our legal team. Will Dorfman is new to our economic development team. And then we just had an offer accepted by Jesse Way, who will be on our clean energy team. And we do have a number of important positions that are continuing to be open for folks that are looking. We have we're now calling it our Director of Equity and Culture. We reposted under that new name, and I think, changed the salary and are starting to get some really great applicants there. That process is moving forward. First round interviews start this week. So very excited about that and really hopeful that one of those great candidates will actually pan out. We still have openings in our land use and housing teams. And, I think our biggest loss and what Mark and I have been dealing with is that we did have both of our web developers in the same week get new jobs. And so that has caused us to, really try to think about how we want to appropriately staff our digital team. I think what you'll see is we need both web developers, but we also really need what we're going to call, I think, a civic technologist. But a lot of the projects that we're working on are projects looking at communities that are either looking at, how can they deal with digital divide issues, or what is the advice that we can give a community as they're really looking at their whole digital portfolio or thinking about, how to upgrade. And so that's not just a web development skill, but someone that really can do that work of kind of talking to public officials about technology. And so we're going to try putting that posting out and seeing, what kind of candidates we can get there. And I think that is a piece of work. We've recently gotten 3 digital divide plans or digital plans that we're working on in Revere, Everett, and Chelsea. I think there's a lot more work that we can do in that space. We're applying for, and I think we'll get this MBI program to work with gateway cities on internet access. And so that's one change in how we're staffing that department. We also, and I don't know if this has been announced to staff, so Sasha and Heidi don't say anything, but we also have 2 staff that are moving to new jobs in our municipal governance team. So that is, again, I think a challenge, and we're figuring out what the appropriate kind of reorg or positions to post in that team are to fill those positions. Most of our staff, and I think we'll see this, many of them are moving out of state. Many of them are moving to lower cost areas, to be honest. It's a lot of staff that are looking, are right at that, they want to buy their first home, and they're moving to places that cost less. That's a lot of what I've heard from staff about why they're moving. And I think, Mark and I anticipate that we'll see more of this. We didn't have a lot of movement for the kind of last year. And I think we'll see more movement than normal over the course of this summer. That's my update.
Yeah, I think we have to be prepared for that. It's just
I think Sam has a question.
the way it is.
What a surprise.
Nobody's moving to Cambridge, Sam.
Everybody
I haven't
should be
known
moving
anyone who moved
someplace
to
else.
Cambridge. Haven't
It
known
is-
anyone who moved to Cambridge in the last 5 years.
So expensive around here. And don't get me started on real estate stories in Cambridge, because that's a great topic. But on the digital stuff, is digital considered infrastructure? I mean, is there about to be a huge amount of money going towards digital? Is question number 1. And question number 2 is, what about sort of borrowing from the city of Boston and hiring for an urban innovation person to work on not just getting people, cities and towns up to speed on digital, but actually trying to rethink a lot of how how that might work in the future.
Yeah, well, I say that I would say that's who Ryan really is. I mean, he is pretty brilliant in that regard, and I think there's just more work in that space than Ryan can do. I think the big challenge on the web development side is that one, obviously, public sector versus private sector, there's a lot of competitiveness issues, but two, we have a really small team, and I think that for some of our staff, it is more compelling to go work with a group of 10 to 20 other developers where they can really kind of build their niche skills and development. We really need someone to be a generalist, to do everything. That's, nuts and bolts. Even if we just have 2 web developers, they kind of have to do it all, as opposed to being able to work in a team. And I think that's hard. And that's been one of our challenges. But I do think that there is a lot of opportunity in the broadband space. A lot of the ARPA dollars are for that. And that's part of why we want someone that's more of kind of a civic technologist than a web developer. I mean, being able to write code doesn't mean you're necessarily good at advising cities and towns about thinking about expansion of broadband infrastructure. Those are 2 very different skill sets.
On the political side, Sam, I would say that, I think that the perspective that broadband is and digital, our infrastructure, I think will prevail in Congress. We're going to have these battles over is housing infrastructure, is childcare infrastructure. I mean, we will have some battles around a number of those issues, even as climate infrastructure. But I think that broadband, there are enough Republicans who would agree that broadband is an infrastructure issue that I think, and as Rebecca pointed out, even in ARPA, which is already passed, of course, it didn't pass on a bipartisan basis. The infrastructure dollars that are in ARPA are mainly for water and broadband. So those are 2 areas that already are already blessed as infrastructure, I would say.
But a lot of the issues here are access issues. A lot of it is about equipment access, and so those are slightly, it'll be slightly different solutions that we're looking at, in the metropolitan Boston area than perhaps we're looking at in Western Mass or the Cape. And so we have to also figure out what are the right programs we should be advocating for and uses of dollars as they come to the state to help deal with some of those access issues. Our reports found, in some of our Metro North communities, upwards of close to 30% of folks don't even have access to a smartphone, let alone a computer. They have no access. So, it's really a device issue in many cases.
My more general point is, if smaller towns are struggling with online town meeting, imagine what happens when $500 million becomes available in the Boston metro area to do broadband. It's going to overwhelm people, I think.
I think one of our big questions that we're going to have to answer, and we haven't answered yet, is we are getting requests from some of our smaller communities to help them manage their ARPA dollars. And I think we have to figure out whether or not that's something that we want to do. We could do that, but it would require hiring more staff. And I think we have to really think about whether that's something we want to do or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. And obviously that changes as well if, legislation changes where open town meetings can be online. Like that completely, that changes everything as well. Because right now only representative town meeting has the ability to be, virtual.
Well, we're working on that one too. We'll see. I don't know if we're going to be successful, but.
Right. But it does require a certain pivot if that does happen as well. So all to come, I guess. All right. If there are no other questions on that or comments, we will go to the next item. Martin and Van are here as soon as they share their screen. Hello. And I believe you are all here to do an Accelerating Climate Resiliency Grant presentation. So take it away, Martin or Van.
Well, I'll just introduce Van. She's going to actually give you the presentation because it's a project she's working on. And I'm not sure if you've all gotten to meet. And when Rebecca just went through the new hires, I was astounded by the fact that Van was just hired exactly 2 months ago on March 1st, and she's already not considered a new hire.
Oh, no, she's a veteran.
I'm not sure whether you met her yet. So Van came to us 2 months ago. Prior to that, she was for, I think, about 6 years with the consulting firm, Vanessa Hang in Brussels, and worked on sustainability and climate, some of the same kinds of issues we work on here. And prior to that, she spent a little bit of time in the Boston Environment Department, the city of Boston. So with that very brief thumbnail sketch, I'll actually turn it over to Van to tell you folks about this very exciting project, which has been an ongoing project, and she's sort of taking it over at a critical juncture.
Great. Thank you, Martin. I don't know, it's bittersweet to not be a newbie anymore, but it's been a great 2 months so far, and I'm excited. So thank you for having me here today to give you a quick update on the, first of all, can you see my screen okay? The presentation, yes. Great. So the Accelerating Climate Resiliency Grant Program. And I can't take credit for, a lot of these yet, because it has been such a great program ongoing. This is going to be the 3rd year in. We already have, the first round of grants out in 2 years ago. And then we are kind of in the middle of the second round coming up on their mid-year report soon. And the happy news I can share is that we recently awarded the 3rd round of 12 projects. We sent out award letters last Thursday, April 29th. So I just want to walk you through quickly. So this, what you see are just some highlights of projects that were completed in the first year of the program, ranging, as you can see, there's youth engagement, community engagement, talking about shorelines, green infrastructure projects. So it runs the gamut. And so for the program, the program remains the same in terms of looking for, these are mini grants to communities looking for actionable, implementationable projects that looking into policies, looking into strategies in capacity building to make sure that these projects are innovative, but also replicable in terms of advancing regional climate preparedness. And so with that, there are 9 program priorities areas. And when projects apply for the grant, they are asked to address or looking to address at least one of these program priorities, ranging from nature-based solutions for climate resilience, which is tend to be addressing the green infrastructure, looking at climate smart parks, urban forestry, et cetera. Municipal climate resiliency policy, looking into regulations like zoning, permitting, inspectional services, and how to integrate climate considerations within these documents. We have projects proposing innovative financing, infrastructure investment models, capacity building through coalitions of convenings, such as stormwater partnerships, regional climate networks, watershed-based climate resiliency initiatives, and then contributions to social resiliency or cohesion, looking for public space improvement, creating dialogues and gathering, particularly for populations or neighborhoods vulnerable to climate change. Projects that combine climate adaptation and mitigation as well. And another thing is the local food system or community agricultural resiliency measures. As you know, food insecurity is one of kind of the key issues, especially in low-income neighborhood, or with food desert is still a big issue in the Boston area. We're also looking at district scale resiliency pilot project, energy grids, for example, and of course public outreach, engaging the arts, the youth movement, culture, and really at the end of the day, all of these are kind of speak to the creativity and innovation in the climate projects that we're receiving and encouraging. And so, as I mentioned, the first round of this round of grant was awarded in November 2020. You see that there are 3 categories of project types: technical assistant and design projects, those capacity building projects, and also capital improvements or capital projects. And so this round is interesting as we're encouraging both 1 year as well as 2 year projects, and recognizing that some of the capital improvement projects or capital building projects may need more time in terms of going through permitting, going through kind of the design process and making sure that it's feasible and it's the timeline is realistic, obviously. And so those two projects are, I believe, the Cambridge and the NADEX, growing food and social resilience, as well as the energy resilience, which is looking at microgrids in Chelsea. And so this round of grant, we will get to know more on May 15 when they turn in the first mid-year progress report. But I'll talk a little bit more about it later. But we have been engaging with these communities through the Resiliency Community of Practice Archive. So have been able to keep in touch and get to know the progress of these projects along the way as well. And so these are the latest who will join the grant program. These are just freshly awarded last Thursday. And again, there's still the 3 bucket of project types. What you see, I think, is quite a lot more on the capacity building side. And first of all, I think it's because so this is for the remaining budget of this year grant program. So most of them are, or all of them are 1 year project proposal, and the grant budget is between 15 to 50K. So these are smaller budget projects. So we want to make sure that there's the feasibility of these projects for the next year. But also another thing that I'm speculating is that a lot of towns and cities are, in the interesting phase or moment where they have their climate action plans probably, just developed within the past year or so, or past couple of years. They've done the MVP vulnerability assessment. And so now they're really ramping up, looking for that capacity, in terms of staff, resources, skills to really ramp up and go into the implementation phase. And so this is kind of like the resources and the needs are looking for right now to prepare them for that next phase. And so with that, I can share with you just quickly too, just some highlights of these projects, and we'll working on getting descriptions of these on our website as well. But these are very exciting projects ranging from, the youth engagement and arts cultures in Arlington. They will be creating these kind of markers looking at climate impacts from the futures. So that's the Arlington High School and the art commissions will be greatly involved working with them to create these and have them throughout the locations in towns for everyone to see. There's also still, there are a couple projects focusing on the food insecurity. One is the Boston Food Forest Coalition proposed by the Department of Neighborhood Development. And that one is looking at kind of the stewardship guidance at a regional space where they will talk about and building kind of the skill set and training needed for urban agriculture practitioners and communities actually as well to really think about, using this space and how to be, sustainable and address the climate resiliency and address the needs of the vulnerable communities in their towns and cities. In their neighborhoods specifically. And then one thing that was interesting that was brought up earlier is a technology piece. And one of that is one of the projects that we're awarding is the Tech Buddy programs in Brookline. And this one will be funding they are looking to provide training, but also the actual tablets for some of the senior populations groups in Brookline so that they're training and also just kind of using that as a communication device to keep them in touch during events of emergency or, extreme weather events. And what they've learned from their MVP vulnerability assessment is that the social isolations, especially as you all know last year, can, have a big toll on especially the senior populations. And so being able to keep them in touch, but also as a way to keep, stay engaged is important to the town. So again, this new group will join the cohorts of the resilience community of practice. And the idea is, I kept repeating, but it needs to be replicable and, sharing in terms of sharing ideas, sharing best practice and lesson learns, and also just kind of that innovations that can be applied to different communities across the region. And so this is kind of that platform where, we ask participants to share their knowledge but also as a space to learn from one another. And we'll be bringing in kind of trainings as needed based on kind of the surveys we'll provide and to them, which circulate to them and ask if, there's any training that they might need. And the two key pieces that we've heard was on financing climate projects and also just community engagement and doing a thoughtful and comprehensive approach to that. And just quickly, kind of, this is the timeline for the remaining time of this program. We've done 2 RCOP workshops so far already, and the third one will happen in June, where we'll welcome this last group of cohort, as well as we'll invite those that are interested from the first round of the grant as well to come join to share, as the project has completed, what else that they've learned and what they can share to the group. And we will also have a series of public speakers, with the first one successfully done in, I want to say March or very early April, was the feature speaker, Dr. Linda Shi, talked about financing, community climate projects. And then the second one that is coming up is on May 25th. It's with Jacqueline Patterson, and she's with the National Associations for the Advancement of Colored People as Director of Environmental and Climate Justice Program. And so I look forward to seeing all of you there as well. And with that, I would love to take any questions that you have.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yes, Erin, it's not so much a question. I did want to thank Van and Martin. I also wanted to acknowledge that Rebecca and Cammie Peterson play a very critical role in this program as well. Also, Ann Herbst, who is Van's counterpart in the environment department, was a little more involved this year than she has been in the past in this latest round.
Also, Mark, actually, yes. Ella Weiss in our land use department has really been the one that's been carrying it through, particularly with Darcy. Yes. Ella gets a lot of credit for that one.
Everything is interdisciplinary and interdepartmental at MAPC. I do want to note just a small clarification on the presentation. A few of you might have been there, from Dr. Linda Shi, who was previously at MIT, and I think Van is now at Cornell. Is that right? I'm not sure. Yeah, and is now at Cornell. It was not only on the issue of financing climate projects, but also on the impacts of climate change on municipal budgets. Yes. And that is a sort of a particular issue that we have really tried to focus on. And we've developed a great partnership with Linda in terms of the research she's been doing on this for several years now. So I was very happy that Van and the entire team could bring Linda in for that webinar, which was very well attended. And I know I learned a lot from it.
Yes, I agree. It was great. Sam.
I just comment. I mean, it looks like a great program, multidisciplinary, looking at lots of different from lots of different angles at lots of different projects. And I was kind of interested by the community building as opposed to the technical assistance stuff, but great program, fascinating.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone else? I'm just scrolling my different screens here to make sure anyone has anything. Sandra, Adam, you're good? Yeah, okay, thumb, and I see the nod. All right. Well, thank you so much, Van and Martin, for joining us. And thank you so much, Van, for such a great update on the program. It's super interesting and obviously very important. So thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Great. All right, next up is the review of draft agenda for May 19th, 2021 Executive Committee meeting.
I think I can bring that up on the screen as well. Let's see if I can have a trifecta of successful screen sharing here. And there it is. Thumbs up. Fantastic. So we'll once again approve some minutes. This is an important month for Treasurer Seidel because we are going to be asking the executive committee and then the full council to approve both the budget for fiscal 22 that Rebecca and Sheila and directors are working on very hard, and also borrowing authority, which we do every year. I will give a report. I don't expect that there will be a written report this time, since I think I sent you 26 pages the last time. So we'll probably be on a 2-month schedule, and the next one will in all likelihood be in June. But I will at least give you some highlights. Not quite sure what's coming up in legislation at the moment. We don't have specific items to approve that we're aware of at the moment, but obviously we have several weeks to the meeting. We'll do an update on the annual council meeting. I actually think that maybe I should provide a little update on that beforehand, maybe when we get through with this executive committee. And I expect there will be either a project update or a MetroCom in May update. Since we are in the midst of MetroCom in May, I think in all likelihood there will be a MetroCom update provided in this executive committee meeting. That's where the agenda stands at the moment. It could still change, of course.
Great. Any questions? Sam, it's May is like Treasurer's Month, so get ready.
Oh my. Yep. Okay. Just looking at it all. Okay. We'll get all briefed up.
Yeah, stretch before the meeting.
Right, exactly.
And you'll be fine. You'll be great. Your election depends on it. It's totally, no, just kidding.
That's right. If it's good numbers, I might get reelected. If it's not good numbers.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anyone have any questions or comments on this? I was a little, last month, I was a little concerned with the amount of legislative content we had because obviously there's so many great things going on, but we did totally fine with time and discussion. And so I feel like this is another meeting that looks great with that.
Well, yeah, it's not often, Erin, that we get 4 federal bills to contemplate. But that was the secret of my last minute disappearance from the executive committee was to ensure that we got back on time.
Oh, don't worry, no jokes were made in that regard. Just
it could have been. It would have been fine.
Don't rewatch the meeting. No, just kidding.
I have a tough skin.
All right.
Can I say a few words, Erin, if you wouldn't mind, about the annual council meeting? So Rebecca and I had a conversation about this just the other day. Heidi has not yet been brought into it. I do think that it is just 2 points about the meeting. I think it is highly likely we will want to spend some time on MetroCom. I have to discuss this with the staff. The staff is a little bit sort of on the fence and uncertain because on the one hand, we're coming to the end of the plan and there are important things to discuss. On the other hand, they're already, with MetroCom in May, they're already kind of overwhelmed with many, many presentations and activities. And we did spend a fair amount of the April executive committee meeting on MetroCom. This is a little up in the air, but think Rebecca and I feel we'll only be 1 month out basically from approving the plan. And it seems a little bit odd not to do an update and some focus on the ongoing activity. So that's just wanted you to know what our thinking is on that. The other question is about awards. And here I would ask Heidi to maybe use a light pen in her note-taking. We are thinking about offering the Man Award this time. I think honestly, we would prefer to do the Man Award when we are back and giving people at least the opportunity of being present personally, which will not be the case at the May annual meeting yet. And I think you are aware there was a tragedy in the Mann family, which caused us to postpone last year for a little while. I've been in touch with the family multiple times over the last several months, and they are open to the prospect of doing the award either in May or in November. Rebecca and I feel that we've never presented the Man Award to Mayor Curtatone, who's played an important role in our organization, Mapc. Obviously, as an executive committee member. He has been chair for many years now of the Metro Mayors Coalition. And, Joe can sort of from time to time be a little overwhelming and forceful. We all recognize that, but he's deeply committed and passionate to regionalism and is always looking for ways to do things with neighboring communities and with communities that aren't even neighboring, but just want to have a common area of activity. And since none of us on this call, unless I'm missing something, actually know what Joe's political future is, except that he isn't running for mayor of Somerville, it might be easier to give him this award in May than it would be in the fall. So that's sort of what we're, where our heads are at the moment. Rebecca will comment if she wants to add anything to that. Just wanted to see if you had any thoughts or comments around the table. And even if you don't, I just wanted you to sort of be aware of what we're thinking of because it affects the annual council meeting.
Sam? Sorry, Adam. Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I just say quickly on Mayor Curtatone, I think he would be a great choice. I mean, what has happened in Somerville over the last 10, 15 years is incredible. And his own work on the regional stuff, you would know much more than I would. But yeah, he's kind of a force of nature. Literally, as I look out this window, I see Somerville. Like I'm in Cambridge, but that's Somerville right there. So I interact with it quite a lot, and I can see a street that was just redone with federal money. So I'm on board there for sure.
Well, I've got you beat, Sam. I see Medford, Cambridge, and Somerville from my window.
Okay, you do have me beat. You definitely have me beat.
That's because I'm in the attic too, so I'm up high.
Well, if I get on the roof, I can look around.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sam. Adam? And Mark, hold on. Mark, could you stop screen sharing? I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, Adam.
I simply say I wholly would endorse that. I can't think of a more appropriate candidate for that award this year.
Is that going to make the meeting very packed? Not that that's a huge consideration.
You mean with people or with substance?
Substance.
Well, Rick Mann and Joe Curtatone are not known for their brevity. That is true. And I mean, we are not approving Metro Common at the council meeting. That will be I think, a special council meeting, which will actually be the fall council meeting sometime in September. We have the budget to approve, but honestly, at council meeting, there's not usually too many questions about the budget. And the finances are good, so I don't think there should be too many questions about the budget. So no, I think we could handle it. That way, we will also do, I should note, Heidi, we will be doing the Elliott Scholarship Award, but that doesn't take a tremendously long period of time. I think we can handle it.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's good. And I think knowing the players, and just accounting for their passionate syntax, I think we can just make sure that we do that. And I think starting on time and then making adjustments on role, I think will be a huge, we're going to need to do that. That's going to be different from the winter council meeting. So, and I would agree. I'm really surprised that Joe hasn't been awarded before, but obviously I feel like he's a super worthy honoree. So do you need a vote, or can you just, okay, good, even better. Great. Is there anything else on the annual?
Well, I think the only other piece, and Mark and I haven't made a decision, but just for your consideration or input, is we have been talking about, potentially a recognition for our staff that have been doing the kind of very COVID facing work. When we got the nominations for the Davidson Award, one of the complicating factors was, there's so many staff that are doing such amazing kind of intense work over the last year, kind of in our COVID response, that it was hard to call out just one. And so, I think there are about, I'd say 8 staff that have really been focused on our COVID response. And so we've been trying to think about whether there's some way to kind of recognize that. I personally feel like it feels like the right moment right now, and the fall might feel too far afield, but we'd have to figure out how to kind of do that and whether we can fit that in. But that's something else that we've been batting back and forth.
Well, I'm very supportive of acknowledgement and recognition, particularly at an annual meeting where there are more people present, to really get that appropriate, although it's never really enough, right? Appropriate as much as we can recognition for really incredible efforts over the last year plus, for sure. Great. And then I guess the other thing I would like to mention is that if people, particularly officers, if you can encourage people to run for executive committee and, take that chance, I would encourage that. I know I'm going to be making some phone calls myself just to, see if people are interested in running and have conversations about what that responsibility looks like or what those expectations are. So I want to encourage you to do the same. I think that, a great way to do it is look at the representative list on the website to see who are eligible to run, and just kind of make phone calls and think about like who would be really great, and really thinking about, that diversity and inclusion and equity piece that we talk about so much, like making sure that we're, having all different kinds of voices at the table. That would be my plug for that. So, Sandra?
So would that be in communities that maybe have, that are lacking representatives particularly, or in any community where we want to try to increase the diversity, or what would be your
I think it could be anything. I think looking at the list, and I think there are certain areas of MAPC that are often not represented on the executive committee. I think that there are, I think we've done a much better job than when I first came on executive committee, like that it visually looks different as well. I remember my first year, I was one of like 4 women on executive committees. So it feels really good that there's many more women, but obviously diversity is much more than gender. So I think just think about things, think about what would make the executive committee more representative of the council itself. And obviously it's an ongoing effort to make sure our representatives and alternates really represent the population. I know it's really difficult, not really difficult. I think it's challenging, right? To have that diverse membership, but it really starts there. So, but obviously executive committee can only be either a representative or an alternate. So I would just encourage to make sure that it's not saying that the same people can't run and shouldn't run. I'm just saying that it would be great if we had races as well. Just not women racers. No, just kidding.
No, there are two separate questions equally as important. One is who runs for executive committee from among the council members. The other is the need to diversify council membership and alternates as well. I actually put something about that issue in my self-evaluation. And maybe June, Lizzie and I have been speaking about it recently, and maybe June would be a good opportunity, the June officers meeting, to discuss that in a little more depth. But in terms of the executive committee, that's a little more immediate. And we will have vacancies. I'm right now thinking there's likely to be at least one city vacancy and at least one town vacancy. I'm not 100% sure that that will be the case, but I think it's fairly likely. And we are always looking for good people and always looking for ways to diversify the membership of the executive committee in, across a multiple number of ways, geographically, race and ethnicity, topic of interest.
Yeah, I just add to this conversation. As I communicate with Mark and Rebecca, there's a youngish woman who I think is really great. She's not on the council, so she's not eligible, but I was thinking she'd be a great sort of person to get involved in this process. And I'm not entirely sure how to start that process of trying to get somebody like her more actively involved in what's happening at MAPC. So
I think there are a lot of different ways to do that, Sam, and avenues. And, I will remind us all that we have started this process of really trying to diversify the council and have really been chipping away and making incremental progress in that regard. And I thank all of you for your support on that. And I think we just have to keep working on it. And I think there's opportunities both to kind of, figure out how to formally become a member of a council, as well as opportunities to figure out how to kind of get engaged with MAPC without that formal council membership. And, so for example, with MetroCommon, one of our goals with that was really trying to diversify the group of people that knew about MAPC. We have both our external advisory committee, and we also have our community engagement advisory committee, which has brought other, folks to the MAPC table. And we're already having a conversation about, okay, should some of those folks come to legislative committee, or could some of them be gubernatorial appointments? So really kind of what are ways, once that opportunity, we've really brought a whole other group of people to the table. How do we keep some of them engaged, bring them to the council, and then hopefully at some point that means they'll run for executive committee and they can kind of move up that chain of involvement.
yeah, part of what I was interesting about this woman is that she works on elderly issues, which they're sort of part of a lot of different issues, but they don't really get called out that much, but they're obviously a big part of what happens in any region. So, but I'll continue the conversation with everybody about getting her involved.
We do need to move on because we have several other items, and then we have a Metro Future Incorporated meeting. It would be nice if we could get this all done by 10:30 or 10:45 at the latest.
I'm sure we will. Sandra, did you want to say one more thing?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So if it's okay with everyone, Rebecca, you get to leave. Lucky you. Thank you. And then Sasha, obviously you can do what you want to do, we can, if it's okay, message in the chat when it's time to come back. Great. Thank you so much, Sasha. And Heidi, you're good to go too. And Sandra, if it's okay with you, okay, great. You knew it. Okay, great. Perfect. Okay, Mark, next up is the Executive Director Annual Review.
Just closing my chat there so I can see you a little better. So I did send out, sadly, this morning, It was a lengthy self-evaluation, although I would note it was not the usual 8 pages. It was only 6 pages. Maybe because so little has happened this year. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to peruse it. I wouldn't expect you have. I did offer to go over sort of the brief bones of it and just, click over kind of a few things so we could begin the conversation. Is that okay? Is that what you want me to do? Do you just want to read it on your own? What do you think is best, Erin?
I mean, what does everyone think? I have not opened it yet because I got it this morning. But Sam, then Sandra, sorry. Oh, go
No,
ahead,
Sandra,
Sam.
you go first. Sandra, you
Okay.
go first. Oh.
Sorry.
So what, I guess I'm not exactly sure what the plan is. I mean, we're not going to finish the performance evaluation today, right? Because the officers are going to do some outreach, and I assume we haven't done that based on the fact that we haven't gotten Mark's thing till now. That was going to be a springboard. Perhaps, I'm not sure, but so if we're not finishing today, it might be helpful to get the outline from you, Mark, just so then we can use that when we go back and read it. But do we have a sense of, is this going to continue for the next 2 months or?
I mean, I would hope it wouldn't be 2 months. I would hope it would just be a month to the next meeting. And Adam and I did have a conversation, text conversation about kind of some questions we could ask, because when we did talk about that staff outreach from our last meeting, and Adam kind of drafted, it's only 2 questions and they're very open-ended, but when I spoke to Adam about it, I thought it was like really good to kind of hit 2 specific points, just on 2 kind of specific areas that were kind of open-ended that allowed, staff members to kind of give their insight and feedback. And the same hand, it wouldn't be too cumbersome for the officers who would do the outreach. I don't think your ties are too flashy, Mark. I think the question would probably, I think the question might probably be, different kinds of things like that. So I think what is probably best today, if everyone's in agreement, maybe Mark can go over kind of a basic outline, not go too in depth.
Yeah.
After the meeting, I would just ask officers to review the document independently. And then I will email kind of the 2 questions for staff members, and then to the officers. And then we may begin outreach. I would say like 2 or 3 staff members. And if you have some identified, I just want to make sure they're in different divisions or departments. So if you could just if Sam's like, oh, I really want to talk to, for Sam, like someone in the finance department, and someone in this department. So then we at least know, and we can kind of make sure there's some diversity there. That would be great. No conversation, obviously, via email, but just like a notification, like this is who I'm contacting. Reply is totally fine because there's no conversation there. Does that make sense, everyone? And then at the June officers meeting, perhaps we will go over some of the feedback. Mark, is that appropriate? And then we'll just kind of go from there.
I think that all sounds appropriate to me. And of course, at any officers meeting, you can have your own session that I would leave, and then I can, you can also talk with me. I can come back in. I would note that you used the words staff outreach several times, Erin, and it's interesting. This morning, I remembered that I was supposed to give you some names, so I did start working on that, and I finished my section on the staff. But then I was going to people outside the staff because I assumed you wanted to talk to that category too. Do you or don't you? Because if you don't, I don't have to come up with a list. If you do, I'll come up with a list.
What do you all think?
I think we should talk to somebody not staff. So I'm no expert in this. Adam, I'm guessing, has done many more of these than I ever have. But, they often talk about 360 degrees. So people you manage, people you interact with, funders. It would be helpful. I mean, just to more on the nuts and bolts side, I have actually looked at Mark's document, and it's quite a powerful document. But in terms of the nuts and bolts side of running the organization, it's really more about his thoughts and his reflections on what this year has been about. So
I have to get my powerful statements out in my memos to you because they won't let me say them to the press. So
I was actually going to ask if you wanted to produce something that could be made publicly available, but
no, what I'm thinking of producing something publicly on is the issue of focusing ARPA expenditures on equity. That's getting some pushback on that too, though. So I will go over. So we have to decide
I would
what other people think. Ooh. I think you've frozen, Aaron.
definitely like a funder would be great to kind of hear from to make sure. I don't know.
So Aaron, you froze for a moment there. Did you just make a statement about funders, or did you mention any other groups?
I did say something about funders. Yeah, I got a pop-up saying my internet is unstable. Go figure.
So I'm going to make one request. I mean, you'll see when I send you this memo, I'm basically saying, here are some names. You should go talk to whoever you want to. I mean, it shouldn't be my job to restrict in any way. That said, on the question of funders, I would suggest some caution. I mean, we have a lot of little funders, and then we have one huge funder. And honestly, there's been big transition in the Bar Foundation, which is still going on with Mary leaving and Mariella taking those responsibilities. And they've never been called before for any review. And I don't want them to start thinking what it means that they were called this time for a review. So I think I might urge caution on the funder side. I would note, as was the case when I was hired, you know, I won't be here forever, and I'm certainly in the denouement of my time at MAPC. And when you are considering moving to the next director, I think that is actually an appropriate time to bring a couple of funders into the conversation.
Okay, I think that's a great point. And honestly,
Okay.
if a funder is not happy with your management of MAPC, I don't feel like they'd be a funder.
Probably not.
You know,
they have
they
other
don't
ways
feel
of
like-
influencing that situation than participating in the review, I suppose. So
Yeah. So perhaps a funder is not the most appropriate at this venue. So if there are no other comments on that, so Mark, maybe like 2 or 3 outside people.
Sure.
And it doesn't have to be formal. You can just email it to me, and I'll just assign and split it up if that's okay with everyone.
That's totally fine. I am going to send that out. It will have some suggestions for staff, and it will have some suggestions for outside folks. The outside folks, to be perfectly frank, are mostly municipal officials because they are our members and they're the people we deal with a lot. And a few other possibilities as well. It'll be more than you can, you'll talk to, but you can choose from those.
Well, I dib calling Adam for feedback, so great.
Well, I didn't include Adam, but that's because he's a caller, not a callee. So
yeah, he can call himself. He can have
so
a mirror session.
If you wish, I will just go over a little bit.
Perfect.
Sort of the structure of the self-evaluation. This year I chose, that I sort of do a different thing, different tactic for the self-evaluation each time. This year was like no other year, so I had to really think, well, what do I want to focus on? I decided to focus on just 2 topic areas: COVID response and recovery. And then what I see is a series of upcoming priority issues or processes for MAPC, basically, I would say in the next, 12 to 15 months. On COVID response and recovery, to be perfectly frank, I start with sort of an assumption of responsibility about some of the shortcomings in our own processes that I think the pandemic has laid bare. I don't linger on that too morbidly, but I do start out with that, and you'll see that, and let me know what you think about that. I then talk about what I am proud of in terms of MAPC's response to the pandemic, and I sort of include, it's kind of a long list, I think it's about 6 or 7 or 8 items, but they're sort of a mix between what we've accomplished externally and what some of the challenges were that we had to deal with internally. Honestly, those things have constituted almost the majority of my work and focus for the past year, because there have been times when I've been spending 80% of my day on COVID response and more recently on COVID recovery. I think that's appropriate, but like for so many of us, it was a completely different year than I anticipated. And I kind of, go through in fairly brief form what each of those 7 items were that we talked about, or that I feel it's important for us to talk about. I talk a little bit about our project work as well. Talk about the fact that I have been less than satisfied with our ability to influence the Baker administration in a number of areas. I also talk about some of the areas where I think we did influence their actions effectively, but I'm a little concerned about the areas that we didn't. I then move on to talk about the second big crisis of the year. This is not only a year with a pandemic and a pandemic-induced recession, it was also a year of racial reckoning in our country and our society, certainly in our state and in our region. I talk a little bit about how we try to address those issues while not losing focus on the pandemic and the recession that continued largely unabated during that period of time. I then move on to the second section, where I talk about upcoming priorities for MAPC, and the items I list there are the adoption and rollout of Metro Common, the fact that we are going to need to do a new strategic plan. Remember that Metro Common is the regional plan, so it's for the region. The strategic plan is more internal, it's for the agency. And Rebecca and I both believe that it's going to be time to do that after Metro Common is adopted. And in fact, the strategic plan, which was a 5-year strategic plan, has now ended. And it's time to do that process again. On a little bit of more micro level, I feel that continuing the vaccination effort is a very important focus for MAPC, and I'll talk about that a little bit. Figuring out ways to help our cities and towns and the Commonwealth spend ARPA and infrastructure dollars from the feds, I think, is an extraordinarily important issue. Helping us to develop and move forward with a post-COVID agenda is a very important topic of concern. We have gotten used to talking about COVID with almost everybody and almost all the time. And there's still, Lord knows, there's still plenty we need to do in that field. But it is time to start saying, what will the agenda be after the pandemic? How do we exercise muscles that we haven't exercised very much in the last year? How do we get people to focus on other things? And how do we get them to do so together and regionally, maybe taking some advantage of the unprecedented level of cooperation and coordination that we've seen among municipalities, which is not going to be easy to preserve. It isn't always the way things work, but I think a lot of people in municipal and state government have seen that collaboration, have seen what it can produce, and I'm hopeful. I run the regional planning agency, so I'm supposed to be hopeful about such things, that we will be able to see that level of cooperation, or at least an enhanced level of collaboration moving forward. And then the last item in terms of priorities is the question of internal operations at MAPC in the post-COVID world, where there are going to be a lot of changes and we don't know what they are and we can't dictate what they're going to be, but we can influence them. And in that sense, we're no different than any other agency or corporation or institution, not only in America, but in the world, which is going to have to figure out what the new normal really is. And so I spent some time on that issue. That really constitutes the guts of the self-evaluation. I hope you'll go over it. I hope it will be useful, not only as a way of conversing amongst ourselves about my performance, but also about what the future of MAPC is going to look like in the next year and beyond. So I'll pause there.
Great, thanks, Mark. Sam?
It's a very powerful document. I mean, surprisingly reflective in the sense of surprisingly candid about your sense. And I'm just curious about you open with this critique of this tsunami that you could have seen coming that you didn't see coming, or you didn't. I'm curious if that will inform the strategic plan going. Well, maybe this is not the way to approach this. I just thought it was a very powerful statement, and I was actually going to ask you if you considered making a public version of this statement, because it's a real look back at this year from somebody who's in a position to think about it.
You know, I'll tell you how this first came to my mind, Sam. I don't have any particular plans about being public about it. This really was for the purpose of a conversation with you, but I'm going to tell you how I first started thinking about it. When you'll remember a few months ago, we started talking about the commission bill. And we actually had to get, I think, an emergency officer's approval because testimony was coming up on that bill, or there was filing deadline. That's what it was. It was the filing deadline. And I came to think, I've thought about that a lot. Why do I care about this commission bill so much? It's not a funding vehicle. It's not a new policy. Why do I care about it so much? And the reason I care about it so much, I came to realize, is
Commission are we talking about, Mark? I'm sorry, I can't.
This is the Investigatory Commission on the COVID pandemic,
Got you.
which is legislation that's been filed by Senator Lesser and Representative Santiago, and which we have endorsed. And by the way, we have since met with the two of them on the bill. One of the reasons it's very important to me is because I feel that what we saw during the pandemic, what we saw during pandemic response on the federal level, but honestly on other levels as well, we just have to come to grips with the fact that it was as I say in the document, it was a catastrophic government failure at many levels. And the purpose here is not to blame people or scapegoat people. The purpose is, as a planner, that you've got to accept that if you're going to move to the next stage of what can we do better. And I thought a little bit about, well, what will my testimony be before the committee? And I feel the most effective way to testify on this bill is to begin with an assumption of responsibility. I don't play a big role, and Mapc doesn't play a big role in anything really. And we're not an exceptionally powerful agency. We have no elected officials here. We actually do have a few elected officials, but not in their MAPC role. And yet, we're part of the picture, and we missed it. And I'm going to acknowledge in that testimony that we missed it and that we bear just that tiny bit of responsibility. But other people bear responsibility. And if anyone's going to move forward with a lesson for the future and trying to do things better, not just on issues of pandemic preparedness, but frankly on issues of equity as well, it has to begin with that recognition. It's not self-flagellation. It's an acceptance of responsibility. And I feel that that's the way in which I would probably make it public. I don't want you to all think that I'm terribly maudlin about it or depressed. There are some things about this pandemic that I am depressed about. But I just feel that if you're going to make change in the future, you have to accept responsibility about what happened in the past, study that history, learn from it, and figure out ways to move forward.
Yeah, it's an interesting document for sure. And I think should be shared somehow beyond the four of us.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Mark. I think so. Kind of the timeline from here is that the officers will independently review your document, or in Sam's case, re-review it. I will email the officers kind of the questions for outreach. In the interim, Mark will also email just me individually, I guess, Mark, what your suggestions are for outreach. I will include those suggestions with the questions. And then just reply and just say who, no discussion, just reply and say like who you're picking, I guess. Or if there's someone on the list that is not called out and you may have like a relationship with them outside of, you know, this kind of bubble, just put that down. Okay. Does that sound good to everyone? And then on the June meeting, we'll come back, we'll kind of have a conversation about what we heard. We'll share that with Mark and any other comments based on your self-eval at that time. And we'll kind of close it out right on time. How's that sound for everyone?
That's good. And we're going to reply to all in terms of who we're choosing so that we can see.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but no conversation, just like do a announcement, just like a.
No
hey,
deliberation.
Yes, no deliberation, just kind of call it out and just be like, okay, Sam's like, all right, I'm picking da, da, da. And obviously, I know it's town meeting season, and I know I have 2 this week, and I know Adam is in a suit, so I think his is tonight. No, yeah, me too. So obviously it might be a week or 2 until we do outreach, and that's okay too. And we'll kind of go from there. Does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah, and it's Metro Common May. I mean, we're supposed to be taking a lot of responsibility on that front. So it's an incredibly busy month. That's all I can say.
Well, you don't have to pick a lot of people. And I don't think there's any particular problem if you need to deliberate. I don't think it's a problem if Adam or Sandra or Sam give Erin a call one-on-one to coordinate the selection of people. I don't think we're likely to get sued over that. So.
And I am seeing how many town meeting nights Adam is anticipating.
Really?
Yeah. Arlington's hardcore. Stoneham is less hardcore. We do it in one night, but I also have the town I live in town meeting as well. So I have a dual municipality town meeting month myself. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. But prayers for Arlington. I hope it goes less than 19 nights. And I know Sandra Bedford is on a Saturday, so enjoy that. I hope it is at least not nice weather that day, so it doesn't feel like you're losing a day. And then Sam, enjoy the high real estate cost of Cambridge.
Oh, that's a fun story.
No, Bedford is outside, so it has to be nice.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I hope it's sunny and everyone has sunscreen on. Okay, great. So with that, I think we have kind of a timeline from here and what everyone's responsible for. And I think that feels great. So Mark, if you could just email me that list at your earliest convenience, and then I can get the ball rolling with those questions and the people and, you know, and then we can get going on that. So since we're still in our officers meeting, is there any other business not known at the time of the posting, Mark?
Can we bring Sasha back in? And
wait. Yes.
Erin, do you want to do that or do you want me to do it?
I am just going to do a chat, Sasha.
And Heidi also.
Please. Oh, okay. I will text Heidi because Heidi left the meeting, but I will text her.
Okay. Because remember, after we adjourn, we're going to do Metro Future Inc.
Yep. And we'll need Eric Hove as well.
I will text Eric.
Thank you.
We'll split up.
Do we sign off and then sign back on for Metro Future? Metro.
We will be doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you take a 1-minute break between?
Yes, you can have 2, Sandra.
Yeah.
All right. But if we're signing off and signing back on, Mark, does it even matter? Like, can't we just adjourn?
It only matters to have Sasha and Heidi present for the adjournment so that we can have those minutes concluded. And then I don't remember who keeps minutes in Metro Future Inc. I think it might be Eric himself.
I believe so.
So then it's not a tragedy if you don't get either Sasha or Heidi, but it'd be
Okay,
nice to get one of them back.
okay. Well, I don't want to impede on more of Sandra's, oh, here's Sasha. I don't want to, but maybe Sandra, if it's okay with you, could you just write down the motion and second? And I believe we will have a unanimous vote for adjournment, and then we'll just kind of list, oh, here comes Heidi. Oh, nope, just kidding, it's Eric. Okay, so what we're gonna do, hi, Eric. We are actually still in our officers meeting, but what we're gonna do is, oh, and here comes Heidi. Hi, Heidi. All right, just kidding. So what we're gonna do now is, since there's no other business at the time of the posting, I am going to ask for, yes, Sandra?
So I have a separate link for Metro Metro.
Oh, see, yeah, we don't, this is the same meeting link. So what we're gonna do, we don't even have to sign off. What we're gonna do is Sasha is going to, after adjournment, Sasha is going to shut off the filming for this meeting, correct? We can take the 2-minute break as generously agreed upon. Perhaps at that time you can shut off your cameras, and at 10:30 or 10:31, I'll call the Metro Common meeting to order, and we'll go from there. Sound good, everyone? All right. So at this time, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn the May 3rd officers meeting.
So moved.
Motion made by Adam.
Second.
All right, second made by Sandra. Any discussion? Great. All those in favor, starting with Sam.
Yes.
Sandra?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
And Aaron, yes. Motion carries 4-0. Meeting is adjourned at 10:28 a.m.